we are joined by three incredible women who are very excited to share their stories with you at Inspire. It's going to be a great conversation today. But first, to get us started, I would love if you could share a shout out in our chat to a woman who inspires you in your life, who keeps you up with this fight. And we'll do some shout outs here on the chat as those are coming in. It's so good to see you all. We'll wait for those call outs to the incredible women in your life who inspire you. And as I'm pulling up our panelists who are going to be speaking on today's stage, we want to share with you a short remake film celebrating some of the other powerful women in our community, some who you might recognize. So Allison, go ahead and roll that tape.
And then at 13 already, you were kicked out of work for causing
12.
Let's make my plastic pancakes featuring Adidas.
This is a mess.
Tastes like empty promises to me. You keep playing.
We've got garment makers being exploited in places like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh.
Because our workers are treated as cheap labor, it's survival.
So I see it as we're all being exploited by big fashion.
When I say pay your, you say worker. Pay your. Pay your.
The threads of our clothes literally connect us to the people who made our clothes. I think if we can kind of realise just how interconnected we are, and then also realise where our clothes might end up, we might think about this thread that weaves us together.
Workers and union leaders say they face intimidation and harassment when they protest, and their demonstrations are often forcefully suppressed by police.
We are unable to express our sorrows and rightful demand, as the police violently crack down on us by using bullets and tear gas.
I started work in the Hermes factory when I was 11 years old with my mothers.
Things are changing because awareness, education, we provide a lot of awareness, education to the management, to the workers where needed. So we try to reduce the gap and make the trust building. And how the workers are important, how the business is important, both parties now realize and also understanding. You know, the infrastructure has been changed. But if we are talking about the living wages, freedom of association, gender-based violence, the livelihood, life, quality of life, it's not changed because our workers are treated as a cheap labor and they are getting minimum wage, not the living wages. If we really want to change, the workers need to be respect, dignity, and need to be ensure the living wage and addressing the workers' living condition and life and livelihood be ensured. When their life is secure, their life is safe, the factory will be safe.
Bangladesh in 2013, there was a Rana Plaza collapse.
Like 15 years back, there was no trade union rights and no trade union issue was addressing, although we have law. But when the Rana Plaza collapse happened, people are realized that now the people need to be work together and workers has to raise their voice. Without it will not work.
I see things as a kind of triangle of exploitation, mainly of women. So you've got garment makers being exploited around the world. We have garment makers in the UK as well, in Leicester, but in places like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And then we have us in the global north as consumers, but we are citizens who are also being exploited because we're being told that we need to buy these clothes in order to look like this celebrity or feel like that influencer and be ultimately like everyone else and all of that. And then we have folks in places like Cantamanto also being exploited because they are left to deal with the global north's clothing waste. I had one fashion CEO say, "Oh, Greta Thunberg, never heard of her." Well, What's she up to? There are lots of people around the world globally doing amazing, important work, and there's a kind of ripple effect. And if we're all coming at it from different angles, we're in a much better position to build progress.
ඊට අරගෙන වැඩ කරන හැඟීමක් මට ඉස්සර ඉස්කෝලේ යන කාලේ ඉඳලම බොහෝ පොදු වැඩ.
Hi sister, how are you?
මාත් එක්ක මගේ වටේ හිටපු සහෝදර සහෝදරියෝ කීප දෙනෙක් හිටියා. එයාලත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා තමයි stand up movement එක පටන් ගත්තේ.
So I think part of the problem is that we feel like we're not connected. So how can we come together to really show that we are working for the same end goal?
These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they are. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
I can't wait to watch you cause trouble.
Nike, you're no good.
You cause the best trouble.
Pay your workers.
Are you ready, Boots? Yeah, I am the troublemaker and I do that.
Start walking.
Yes, Jemima says we love troublemakers. We do, don't we? Some of you are sharing your lovely shout outs to the women who inspire you this International Women's Day. So many call outs for your incredible remake community on this call, which is so touching. It absolutely makes my day that we all have these wonderful women around us making change. Pooja gives a shout out to her daughters who inspire her to be a better human every day. And so many shout outs to our Nazma in the wonderful video who makes good trouble every day. I'm just so inspired by all of you on the call, and thank you for being here. I'd love to introduce our wonderful panelists to you today. We are joined by Kimberly Jenkins. I'm going to drop her bio in the chat, who is the founder, director, and principal researcher of the Fashion and Race Database, who studies the impact of our clothes through the lens of politics, race, psychology, and anthropology. Thank you so much for joining us, Kimberly. If we can give a remake round of applause. Thanks for being here. We're also joined by Abrima, co-founder of Studio 189, alongside the fabulous Rosario Darson. This is an artisan-produced fashion brand and social enterprise, which has been awarded the prestigious CFDA Award for Sustainability. Abrima is also faculty for fashion business at Parsons School of Design. Thank you so much for being here. And our third panelist, Abhi, I'm not sure if Abhi is here. She was texting me this evening, her time, that they're experiencing some power outages in Sri Lanka. So I'm looking once more in the chat to see if she made it. And if she does get reconnected to power, we will bring her right back up here with us. But Abhi is an incredible, renowned human rights and gender justice campaigner at the Asia Floor Wage Alliance, who leads research, campaigning, and strategy for jobs of justice across South Asia. And when we were compiling this incredible panel of women who inspire us, it was, of course, so hard to choose because we lock arms with so many incredible women all day, every day. But these panelists surely came to mind. Yeah, so great to see you all, and so many great shout outs for women who inspire you coming in the chat as well. We're going to get started with our panel with Kim. Kim, your research focuses on race, gender, labor, and sustainability, a very intersectional approach, which is, of course, aligned to the work that we do here at Remake. You're also an advisor on our annual Remake Fashion Accountability Report, which takes this approach and is due out this Wednesday, so look for that to come very soon. Can you share with our community why this intersectional approach is so foundational to you and the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. I think first and foremost, when I first started doing this work, when I started teaching a little over 10 years ago at Parsons School of Design, and then Pratt Institute, and then moving to Canada and teaching at Toronto Metropolitan University, and then coming back to New York, in terms of an intersectional perspective, my subject position as a racialized woman who identifies as Black really kind of was front and center when it came to me teaching. When I was teaching fashion history and theory, having to have conversations about race and racialized identity, ethno-religious identity, and things like that was just so important to bring to the forefront. And so I just came to many revelations as an educator in the fashion system, working with students and the issues that they were dealing with as emerging designers, and also seeing kind of these, if you could kind of look at this overlap, this map of kind of how you identify in terms of ability, gender, religion, all of those aspects. That was really kind of the centerpiece of how we should address things. And so I started to find myself dealing with that when I worked with industry insiders and with fashion brands who had not really considered race or intersectionality in terms of the work that we would do together. So when I was working with luxury brands, having people come to me with their stories about what should I do when dealing with this luxury brand, these are people who are working inside these brands. I have horror stories of just how some of these CEOs who are still working today and industry insiders were just absolutely neglecting the race aspect when it comes to how they operate their business, how they treat their workers, their employees, and how they just address issues in the fashion system when it comes to race. It's just riddled with blind spots. So intersectionality is absolutely critical, and I'm still not satisfied. I mean, from my corner of academia I bridge academia and industry together. From my experiences in the last 10 years working in the halls of academia, and then also experiencing how the industry works, we are still not really considering an intersectional perspective with all of this, due to all of these blind spots in terms of the labor that we expect of people intellectually, financially, emotionally. It's still happening. It is just truly still an issue, sadly, when it comes to these aspects. And also when we talk about sustainability, not having, oftentimes leaving out the racial component of that, of the impact of sustainability. I actually did an event for Pratt Institute several months ago called Sustainability as a Racial Justice Issue. So just kind of bringing that into the fold also. So that's where we start to have conversations about class and race also in terms of sustainability. So it's just so critical to continue to make sure that those conversations are had when we talk about sustainability.
Absolutely. And I mentioned our Remake Fashion Accountability Report, which you've served as an advisor for. And since seeing a surge of brand commitments toward being more inclusive in 2020, we have seen backsliding. In our 2024 report, we've seen stagnation in diversity and equity investments made by fashion brands and changes in terms of corporate governance. How would you advise us as a community or folks working in the industry to keep pushing for progress?
We have to keep pushing for progress. Just as an example, this doesn't have as much to do with sustainability, but more about these conversations across the industry and in academia. I run the Fashion and Race Database, which is an education platform that teaches everything you'd want to know about the intersections of fashion and race and colonialism and discrimination and all of those aspects. So we are almost at 60 universities, colleges, and museums around the world that subscribe to our platform, meaning it's a formal subscription where we live inside of all of these schools, libraries, and museums, and is used as a teaching tool amongst professors, students, staff. But what is getting pretty scary is when we'll get inquiries every week from a new university or college or museum that wants to subscribe to us. But one state in particular we've been having an issue with is, of course, Florida. And this is where we're really starting to see a scary trend happening. With Governor Ron DeSantis, he is really putting a crackdown on conversations, censoring what kinds of conversations can be had. I'm sure sustainability isn't far down the line, but the first thing he's attacked is gender and now in race. And so we have universities that actually cannot subscribe to us because that would involve using funding towards what they think is wokeism or critical race theory. So now students are pretty much banned from being able to hear these stories about underrepresented histories or conversations about the intersections of race and sustainability. So it's truly frightening that they are having to be so secretive with us. We had to actually, for one school, we had to come up with a kind of scholarship to pay for a school to have it so that the state wouldn't find out about it. So, I mean, it's really becoming frightening with where this is going. And also we're just seeing more states outside of that in corporate brands. I mean, if any of you have been seeing some of the headlines in the news, that companies are now, scaring away from anything related to DEI, diversity and inclusion, anything related to race. So it's these hot button words now that not just schools, corporate brands and companies are shying away from. They don't want to be associated with it. So hopefully sustainability and climate change won't become so politicized that corporate social responsibility departments also have to start censoring the way they talk about that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're so grateful for your work. Folks in the chat are saying that they have learned so much from you already, and we'll be linking to incredible resources where you can learn more. And we're just so glad that we could highlight that work here and continue to work with you as well. We're joined by another wonderful panelist who I'd love to welcome today, Abrima. Abrima, our community is such fans of you and Rosario's joyful brand, Studio 189, which is an incredible example of how fashion can be a force for good. I'd love if you could share a bit of your story and give advice to any sustainable brand founders or aspiring creatives in our community about how you stand out and, make progress against fashion's race to the bottom.
Just a little question, no big deal. Well, okay, so first of all, I want to say thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of Remake. I've known Aisha since a long time. And, one time, Aisha, you gave me that shirt. What is it? Something Your Values. That t-shirt you used to make. And someone stole it from me. And I was like, I know that's not your shirt. And they were like, how do you know it's not my shirt? I'm like, because I know this shirt, because I know these values. I'm also a huge fan of Kimberly Jenkins as well and the work that you're doing. And so I just wanted to start by that. And I also wanted to add to your last comment, Emily, or I don't know who said it, but that sustainability is also being politicized. I think it was Kimberly who said it as a word. It's coming into this interesting lane. Politically and economically. So anyway, that aside, I'm going to rant a little bit about my background. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing at Studio 189, where I come from, because I think it's important to understand where I come from, to understand how we got to Studio 189. And in the context of that, I'll just give a little bit of advice, lessons learned, and what I would do if I was starting again, and or how I would move into the future. So hopefully, anyone who is starting something and or working on something, we can all kind of grow together and make the change that I hope we all want to see in the world. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. So hi, I'm Abrima Erwiah. I am, sorry for the background, but I think it's important for context, and I'll try to watch the clock. I'm half West African, half American. I saw somebody put Ghana in the chat, so I'm Ghanaian, I'm Ivorian, so Ivory Coast, Ghana. My tribe is in Zima. I'm from the border of Ghana and Ivory Coast. And I'm also American by way of my mom. So my dad is Ghanaian Ivorian, and my mother is from Mississippi. And then my family moved to Pennsylvania, to Pittsburgh during the Great Migration. And they met in New York. I'm born and raised in New York. And I have to give a little background. So I went to school here. I went to NYU, I studied in Italy, I came back, et cetera, et cetera. I worked in fashion, luxury goods for a lot of well-known companies. And The most recent one before starting Studio 189 was Bottega Veneta. I started that in 2004. And, you know, the reason I talk about Italy and Bottega Veneta is because something that I found really beautiful was the commitment to craftsmanship and artisanship, techniques passed down from generations and generations, and seeing how people live with dignity and how the community works and that people can afford to send their kids to school and take care of themselves, which is how it should be. But as we all know, when we visit other countries, including our own, my own, and your own, and even in America, it doesn't always work like that. And a lot of people can't afford to take care of themselves, aren't given what their due is, and are not necessarily living with dignity and grace. And that's unfair because they're sitting at the heart of this fashion system that we all work in. So how does that make sense? So this was bothering me. And I was trying to have, like, now we can have these great conversations, but this was a while ago, and it was really hard to find people who would be willing to have these conversations because everything was so siloed. CSRs, and we had like the people who care about people were over here, and the fashion system, we're all beautiful, we're over here, you know, and then we're doing business over here in this intersection, and they just didn't want to have it. And so I was doing a lot of charity work. And then ultimately, Rosario Dawson, who sits on the board of V-Day, which is dedicated to stopping violence against women and rape, invited me to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So obviously I'm skipping a lot. But the point is, that trip was amazing. It was amazing. It was difficult to get there, but it was incredibly beautiful. And what we met were women who had been the victim of rape and sexual violence. It was in partnership with V-Day, so V, who's now formerly E. Venzler, Dr. Mugwebe, who's henceforth won the Nobel Peace Prize for the work he's doing in the Congo. It's called the City of Joy. And it was incredible. And they would make things, craft things, and they would buy farmland, farm cassava, feed their kids, send their kids to school. And what we saw was this incredible circle of sustainability that was happening. And so I realized that really the work that I needed to do and the calling wasn't to kind of go top down, which I think people tend to do, think I have this great idea and I'm going to go do this, but to move bottom up and to work in the community because it's happening all over the world in marginalized communities. And the only way to do it is to give people the tools to be able to do it themselves. So that's where this kind of platform idea of Studio 189 came to be. I went back to Italy where I was living, working for Bottega Veneta. The Kering Foundation for Women's Dignity and Rights asked me to mentor an organization in Uganda that makes washable sanitary napkins for girls that skip school when they have their period. And again, it's just another thing that sets girls back. And it really moved me. And I was like, I gotta go. The universe is calling. I'm quitting. And I moved to Africa. Again, I'm fast forwarding here. But I started traveling around Africa. I moved to Uganda, did work connected to the community for International Women's Day. And then in 2013, V said 1 in 3 women will be raped and sexually violated. She asked for 1 billion people to take a stance against sexual violence. And she asked them to rise and to be in their power. And I said, you know, it's a dance. And I thought, what a simple and beautiful gesture. So you can see the power of women. And so I said, fashion can be an agent of social change. And underneath the underbelly of all the work we're doing are many people, many women working in informal sectors, people whose names we don't know, that maybe we may never know, you know, and that we should know. And, you know, we have girls in our supply chain, I mean, not mine, but in the supply chain that might have been child soldiers, wives of child soldiers. But does this have to be their only story, or can we tell another story? And also, can we rethink what that supply chain looks like? So I moved to Ghana. I started working with smaller artisans and churches. I do a lot of craft work, a lot of handwork, preserving traditional techniques. So kente weaving, hand batiking, you know, if you're not familiar with it, you should look it up. Various dye techniques. And really the idea here is to look at the value system kind of from raw materials and every step of the chain, cut and sew, et cetera, all the way through and kind of figure out how to build a circular system. So we started a factory in Accra that we have now with the United Nations Ethical Fashion Initiative. And we work with lots of different artisans that specialize in different techniques. And we have an organization within Ghana, and then we also do the work outside of Ghana. That's a lot. So there's many more things, but what do I want to say from that? One is one of the key lessons, and this is another reason why I really like the work that everyone here is doing and that Aisha is doing, is when you're a small brand, you're sitting in this really weird intersection between people especially if you care, artisans, like sometimes people ask, what's your goal? I know we're never going to be $1 billion brand. It's not going to happen. Why is it not going to happen? Not because I don't like money, but because it's off the back of somebody, you know? And so like what we're trying to do is create something with equity, something where we're kind of pivoting back and looking back hundreds of years to figure out how we got here and how all of these discussions intersect and where are we going, right? And so a brand sits in this weird space between the artisans that we're working with, the people, and then all these other people that are placing orders. I just want to leave, I want to say this because I feel like no one ever talks about this, right? We basically become banks. It's a really, really weird thing. How is it possible that stores place orders if they don't have any money to pay for it? I don't understand. I don't understand. It's very strange. It's a very strange thing. So stores 1 year, 2 years in advance are placing, you know, they want something, right? So if we're operating on a seasonal basis, I'm making spring, summer 2024 right now. I have to start sometime in advance. A store is going to place an order and put the pressure on the factory, right, to start that order, having zero idea what the market actually wants. But somebody has to start the order, because if the order doesn't start, there's no way that that order is going to deliver on time. So the only people who can actually sustain that capital to do that order are large factories. Like nobody can do that. And even they, I'm sure, struggle because they're taking the hit against the store, because the store might take a wrong bet or might go insolvent or might delay payments or whatever, have whatever payment terms they have and delay the payment on the factory. And somebody has to push that payment to somebody else, which is this kind of invisible worker. Or it's the brand, a small brand. You have to start. So if I'm weaving with artisans in communities that are all over the place, right? That in Burkina Faso, we had 2 coups d'etats. 2, okay? I always like to say, if this is America and somebody tried to overthrow the government, would you still go to work? Probably not. But they do go to work because they have to go to work. They have no choice. How can you cancel those orders? But stores do. They either declare bankruptcy, they cancel the order, they reduce the order, and really, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, you try and you can, but really, there's not much that you can do about it. That's the quick version, because I know there's a time constraint, but I do think it's something important to impact, because I think brands act like banks with really bad payment terms. You're taking basically a payment against the store that's not going to pay you. You take a loan against a bank, right, that have terrible terms, maybe 30% or whatever. And then if you're lucky, but your artisans need to be paid right away, right? Because my artisans can't wait 2 years for a payment. They can't wait 5 minutes for a payment, because I get life and death messages. You know, it's somebody died, somebody needs dialysis, somebody is in the village, the child is this, like there, it's really important, you know, work that we're doing, and it can't wait. And so this is just something I think it's important to think about, because I know brands get excited when they get orders, and I think it's great. And I'm not coming for stores. I love stores. But I think that there's a disconnection between the reality of wanting to buy something and be in the fashion system and the people that do this work, that are human beings that need to get paid on time and that need to work in a different type of system. And then there's nothing in the middle other than maybe the work that you're doing and other organizations that are trying to pass legislation. But I'm saying, as small brands that are starting, just, it's okay. I think take a step back, right? Like really look at the bigger picture when you're beginning to start your brand and or work with another organization. Really think about how those dots connect, and if you can afford to sustain the time it will take. Because I think what tends to happen is that people lose money. They start to lose capital and they don't know where the money is burning. The burn rate is too fast, and we lose them down the pipeline. So it's really sexy. It's really great. This brand is hot, 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 gone. And then another one, hot, 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 gone. And I think that the industry builds them up really, really, really high. And then 2 years later, we never hear from them again. And no one knows what happened. So is there a way collectively, right, that we can think of taking a step back, looking at the fashion system? How can we work together? And do you really need to be at a large retailer? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. Is there an interconnected system without that? We have incredible consumers, incredible producers that can link up in other areas and supporting each other, you know, because I think a lot of times, sometimes people have really great projects that they're doing, but they're not always being supported. You know, instead we're looking to this like large organization to save us. But like, are they going to save us though? Maybe they're going to save us. But does like, if we look back hundreds of years, did they save us? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But is there another way that's a little smaller? I believe in, and I'll wrap it because I know I'm eating too much time, but I really believe in the power of individuals and small people working collectively to solve small issues. If I think about like even the workers that we work with, I used to really think, oh, this big company is going to come and we're going to show them all the great things we're doing and they're going to help us and whatever. They don't know the difference. They see 25 faces of a specific color and they come back the next time. You could switch half those team members. They think it's the same people. If on paper they see 25, it's the same. They don't know that they're different people. I think it's really important to take the time to go one at a time. What's your name? What is your story? What like take your time. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? Who are your kids? Where do you live? You know, like this type of exercise is really important. And so working collectively, I'll wrap it. And the other piece of advice I would say is the power of saying yes, and also giving yourself permission to understand that it's a really long journey, and like we're not doing it for tomorrow, we're doing it for a much longer time. It's been hundreds of years, and I have to remind myself of that because I take on a lot of responsibility and I tend to feel weighted and sometimes like you know, but like I can't solve all these issues, right? Sometimes you're doing everything right, but the lights, electricity issues, water issues, infrastructure issues, these are well beyond your capability, even when you try your best. Coupled with where we seem to be going now, what Kimberly just talked about, we can't say certain words, we can't talk about this, you know, like this word is a no-go, you know, like war, conflicts, pandemics, like it's heavy and we'll lose you. So like breathe, which I try to do every day. I meditated this morning, realize that it's a really long way that we have to go. And like, what's the small issue we can tackle? And how do we do it together and say yes? When Aisha and Emily asked me to do this, I was like, I'm doing all these things. I'm like, no, I'm coming. I'm saying yes. And Rosario and I have this joke that we do together where when we ask each other to do something and we think of the, you know, your friend asks you and your brain thinks of all the zillions of reasons why you can't, we'll start the email, we'll delete everything, and we'll write back, okay. And we'll say yes. So there's something to think about. And also, sometimes we also have to learn to say no, to set some of those boundaries, which I'm still trying to learn how to do. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure I'm eating too much time. Thank you.
Your advice was so beautiful. Can we all maybe just take a collective deep, relaxing breath like Abrima encouraged us to do? I think that's so important. And so many folks in the chat were saying, thank you for explaining this to us, for shedding light on these issues. We're unlearning, we're relearning. And I think also important to underline how these issues about the way that the industry is structured from a systems level do impact workers, of course, in the Global South. I wish you all were able to hear from Abby with Asia Floor Wage Alliance today. Unfortunately, she's experiencing some power outages in Sri Lanka, but we'll make sure to share out her incredible work with our community after this call, because as our speakers have said, this is all very interconnected. Kim, I want to kick it back over to you and also encourage our community to start dropping your questions in the chat. We'll have some time for a Q&A with our panelists. But Kim, I wondered if you had any examples of positive progress within the industry that give you hope that you wanted to share.
That actually was a tough one. I'm not sure I have one for you yet. Especially on my end of the things as an educator and as someone who's kind of navigated different campaigns, projects, partnerships. I know in terms of racial justice issues, since 2020, we needed a couple of years to see how things would pan out, as many new initiatives just started taking off in 2020. And so as they were kind of exploring that, it wouldn't be until about 2022 we would kind of see the fruits of it, or 2023. I'm not sure yet, to be honest. But what I can say in response to that, I can't give you like major corporate or larger company examples, but kind of aligning with what Abrima said, what I am focused on and prefer to focus on is everyone, especially the people who I don't even know yet, who are small and doing this work. I'm more about these partnerships and collaborations I'm seeing between fashion departments at schools and organizations like Studio 189 or Custom Collaborative, just really showing these great innovative ways of doing labor and garment production and exploring supply chains in new ways, slowing things way down. I think what I've been more interested is in the smaller designers just doing their own thing and sort of divesting from the larger system, divesting from fashion shows or large retail or seasonal productions and things like that, and just doing things in a more intentional way. Here in New York, I've really loved seeing smaller designers, actually a couple I've seen, doing these, they're just creating their own salons, they're just getting a small space and they're opening up on their terms, like with their own store hours, and inviting you to come in and have a conversation with them. And they can kind of show you around the clothes that they're making or the hats that they're making. So I've been really excited, honestly, about a whole uprooted approach of just slowing things way down, divesting big time, and just trying new things and encouraging relationships, intimate connections. And who cares if we don't hear from you for a few months? If you don't have the bandwidth or capacity, I want you to come with your best, something that you're very excited about in terms of producing, and you want to make sure that your team is supported. So that's really kind of what I've been focused on, is just who's collaborating and doing these very small intentional partnerships or projects or collaborations, and just kind of doing it on their own terms and moving away from this kind of grind and better churn out this collection.
Can I add something?
Please.
I also think something you were saying also made me think of this, is in the system and in the work we're doing, for example, at the factory or in Ghana. I think there's in Ghana, but also in other places, the importance of people seeing people that look like you doing the work. I can't understate the importance of that, whatever that looks like. So I can speak about myself, obviously, but whatever you look like, someone that also looks like you in your community, seeing you in certain positions is incredibly valuable, right? Because we're trying to create a system also where people feel like they can, right? Like that you're not only waiting for someone to save you, but you feel like you can do it too. And if it's not going to be you, maybe it's going to be your child, or maybe it's going to be somebody else, like access to education or something, right? So like I come from a background, for example, like on the one side where my mom didn't get to go to college, her father couldn't read or write, like we were farmers, like all of that kind of very American history side. And then on the other side, where in Ghana or in Ivory Coast, but in Ghana specifically in the factory, where when they see somebody who has a project like ours, they don't look like me. I'm not the boss. Like, in fact, sometimes I have to convince people that I am the boss. Sometimes I have to have somebody else who stands in front of me so they can get it out of their system first, and then they'll turn and say, actually, it's her, and what does that look like, right? And how does that work? And I think what I've learned, though, is that in terms of the people, when they see me, they do something like this. They come to me and say, I want to go back to school. Never thought I was going to go to school. I want to go back to school. And then now 4 years later, they have a degree in fashion, maybe, and they will specifically, and also have their own business and kids and a family, and speak with another type of authority that they never did before. They used to be a little bit like this. Now they walk like this, right? Or I have another gentleman who I met a long time ago, and we were in a village, and we were reading children's books in a kind of hut. And it was like very terrible, like these books that come from colonialism that were like, when I grew up, I want to be a farmer. And like really, but the kind of books that want you to prepare yourself for basically servitude, like that's what you're doing. And I was like, are we really reading these books? It's terrible. And I was like, why don't you go back to school? And he was like, it wasn't even in a frame of reference. He went back to school. He has his 4-year degree. He has a master's. He's now doing his PhD. And there's another gentleman that works with me that I'm like, get off TikTok and go to school. He's like, oh, madam, I need to be on TikTok. You know, I'm going to be a rapper, because that's what people are showing him, right? And so I was like, just talk to this guy. And, you know, this other gentleman who worked with us, I walked away, but I heard a little bit of the conversation. He said, that really touched me. He said, look, I never thought I could. No one ever told me I could. I didn't even, you know, and it wasn't about just the money that they helped me with, but it was this constant encouragement, like being reminded that I could, you know. And also I used to listen to people have conversations, Abrima and etc. I never knew what they were talking about. I would just pretend, because I couldn't understand anything they were saying. And now when I try to go negotiate salary with other companies, I can say no. I can decide. These are the village you got. I can decide. I do my PhD now. I have a family, a master's, a child on the way. And he's like, and I get to choose if I want to do this work or not. And he's like, and the thing that I love the most about what he said to this other guy is he said, when you're ready, I will help you. And that's it. I was like, he said, I will help you do your applications. I will see you through. And that idea of each one, teach one, to me is really, really powerful. But there's lots of them. All the factory workers will come and say, this is my daughter. I want her to have this opportunity. Somebody will come and say, I'm going to become an engineer now. But the fact that they see somebody that looks like them in a position like this is a big deal. And it's here too. I sit at trade fair sometimes, and young women would run up to me and say, you know, you're the only person of color that actually owns their company here. Thousands of people, thousands. And they would run up to me and say, how did you do it? I don't understand. How I didn't even notice we were doing that. I said, what do you mean we're the only one? So the point is, it's not always true that we're the only one, but it's not a very big group, right? So the point is like the importance, regardless of how you look and what you look like, is that there are people that look like you, and that people can look up to you also, and that you can look up to somebody else, and we can also create this system that's interconnected. And a lot of it to me is through training, mentorship, and education, and the important work that I think Kimberly is doing, but the important work of also documenting, storytelling, and showing that we have value and our stories have value and meaning and purpose, and that contribute economically, even though we haven't been always told that they do. And you can trace the story of folkloric tales and symbolism and understand there's a value associated with all those things that are oftentimes not associated. So people's parents think you shouldn't do that job, or it's under-respected, or you're just a local tailor. No, there's a huge fashion system, and you deserve a slice of it too, like everybody else, and an opportunity to grow economic wealth and generational wealth, and build legacy and infrastructure for your country or your community. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Our community is cheering for you all in the comments as well. And I have a question, Kimberly, that I think will be well directed to you, and then you can chime in with what you were going to say as well. A question coming in about how sometimes the world of academia can feel far away from the industry. There's a lot of research and incredible thinking being done about changing the industry for better, but how can we begin to transfer those innovative ideas into practice? And wonder if you have any insight on that. Or
and in terms of how to take some of those ideas and concepts that we learn in the classroom and into, well, for starters, a major aspect of my work as a college professor, and then having this space and also consulting with brands, was all about translating some of the concepts that we talk about, or bringing over underrepresented histories into these conversations and putting them into practice. I think one major aspect was for the Fashion Race database, our team does the work of gathering all of the names and faces of people who are doing this work in sustainability and with social justice and related to race and decolonizing, and just kind of showing everyone these are the people doing this work. Gosh, I don't even, my mind's kind of exploding of like, oh gosh, how to answer this question. I mean, even just the ways we kind of bring over conversations about best practices in sustainability. These are just things we are able to bring to a larger audience. What I wanted to share, though, was I could relate a lot to what Abrima was saying in terms of being a first or sometimes an only one, whether for me as an educator being their first and only Black professor or Black woman professor. Also, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. In terms of the work that I've been doing, we've also seen now this democratization of bringing bridging academic ideas and concepts over to larger audiences. So what I mean by that is we're seeing new digital humanities projects and even Instagram accounts where we're seeing scholars finding new ways to share archives of history or ways of critiquing the fashion system, which has been really exciting, but it's taken blueprints like Fashion Race Database, or Jonathan Michael Square's Fashioning the Self in Slavery and Freedom, just amongst so many different platforms. So we're seeing that there's new ways to kind of disseminate knowledge and bring it into practice, both in academia or design or with industry practices. Also, what I wanted to add, though, when I was thinking about what Abrima was saying is, I guess more on a local scale, I really loved seeing the confidence also over the years of fashion design students realizing that success doesn't have to look like just going into a major corporate brand. And so they're doing their own work, and this kind of piggybacks on what I said earlier. They're doing work now at their own pace. Case in point, a former student of ours at Pratt Institute, Margaret Burden, went back home to North Carolina. So first of all, just kind of rethinking this idea of you need to be in some fashion capital in order to be successful, or you need to be in the big city to make it. Now we're seeing students now get the confidence to go back to their respective small towns or hometowns and build their own labels or brands there. So Margaret Burden has been doing this very thoughtful work where she's upcycling pieces and turning them into pants, jackets, coats, and things like this. And also just adding this very intimate emotional aspect to it. So she's one collection she came out with a couple years ago were these memorial garments where you can take the clothes or scraps of garments from someone who you love who passed away, and then she will fashion it into a new garment, and the label or tag in the back of the item will have their name and something you want to remember by, so that you can always carry that item of clothing in a new way. So I just think that's a really fascinating way of doing things. And then she took time off to have a child, and she just, when she speaks to you on her Instagram account, she's like, we're going to stop production for a while. I'm going to have a child, catch my breath, live life, be a mom, and then I'll come back, with some new pieces. And so just being able to feel confident enough to just, again, divest from this grind and feeling like you need to produce, and just find new ways to showcase your clothing or participate in selling your pieces. So I've just been really excited with new entrepreneurs that we're seeing, and especially with the students that we're bringing out, graduating out of these programs, and realizing you do not need to be in some fashion capital or a big city in order to feel successful. So just, grow where you're planted, and, just kind of see how you can cultivate a community and, a small cottage industry in your hometown. Oh, one other thing is I did a talk at Condé Nast a couple weeks ago with handbag designer Brandon Blackwood, and we both live around in the Brooklyn area. And he was even mentioning to me that he and fashion veteran Beth Ann Hardison are creating this sort of laboratory, this incubator space nestled in the neighborhood for designers to get together, kind of like a big house, to do work. And that's actually been a dream of mine. I remember talking to designer Chanel Campbell a few years ago about, wouldn't it be nice if there was like some cabin we could purchase in upstate New York where people could just escape and just do the work, just enjoy doing this kind of work. So I just really been interested in seeing new ways, smaller ways of producing and just building community in that way.
Thank you so much. I would love if everyone could give a big round of applause for our fabulous panel today. You've inspired us all so, so much. Thank you for this encouragement. It has been just incredible. We appreciate you so very much. I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague, Alexa, who I'm calling up to the screen. Hi, Alexa, who has some advocacy updates from Remake to share with you all.
Yeah, so thank you, Emily, and hello to everyone. So to recap, the Nike campaign aims to get over 4,500 mostly women workers in Thailand and Cambodia paid $2.2 million in stolen wages and benefits that they've been legally owed to, that has been legally owed for 3 years now. The campaign is still ongoing, but today we'd really like to take a moment to celebrate our community and the way you've all shown up and continue to show up to support makers around the world. So many of you have joined in to participate in our LinkedIn actions, calling on Nike's CEO and board members to take responsibility for compensating these workers. We've flooded Nike's Instagram accounts to let them know that they're not off the hook for these cases. And our growing petition has now surpassed 124,000 signatures. So if you haven't signed yet, please take a moment to do so, and I'll drop it in the chat. And then now we're also seeing a remarkable show of international solidarity among workers in other garment producing countries. If we could go to the next slide, please. So just last week, the Somalito Garments Shramik Federation in Bangladesh led a demonstration showing their support for the impacted Thai and Cambodian workers and to express their own demands that Nike finally pay up. And here are a few very powerful images from the demonstration. And though Nike is still maintaining its stance that it did not produce in the implicated factories, despite clear evidence otherwise, we know that Nike is hearing us. Multiple labor groups, worker rights organizations, investors, along with tens of thousands of citizens are applying pressure from all different angles. So although it seems like Nike is sitting in their silence, don't think that they don't have a team behind the scenes that are fully aware of the campaign and discontent that's being expressed from all these different groups. These huge corporations do have teams whose job it is to track and respond to these issues. But if anything, the ongoing implication of big brands in these wage theft cases that have especially been amplified following the COVID-19 crisis, it really shines a spotlight on an industry-wide lack of responsible commercial practices, which essentially accounts for how fashion companies treat their suppliers. And this is one of the major key themes in our 2024 Fashion Accountability Report, which again will be launched this Wednesday, March 6th. And this report, you'll find that Nike scores practically no points for commercial practices and notably does not publicly disclose an exit policy, defining the steps that it takes when ending a business relationship with a supplier. So one of the things that we ask for in our criteria when evaluating these companies on their corporate responsibility is a responsible exit policy, where a company has to honor their contracts with suppliers without payment delays or asking for cancellations or discounts on orders that are already placed, even if there's some kind of unforeseen event like a pandemic or a climate event. So that means ensuring that suppliers are paid for both in-process and completed orders at the time of exit. It means ensuring a fair negotiation process that gives suppliers space to actually partake in setting contract terms and exit processes. And then it also means that companies take on the obligation of both mitigating and remediating any kind of adverse human rights impacts that their pulling out of a factory may result in. And that includes paying out worker wages, severance, and other benefits. So what the Nike case shows is that these terms need to be enshrined into contracts so that companies are legally held to these commitments, and when they don't meet them, that there are real consequences. So this is just a crucial mechanism for accountability that's really important if we're to address the power and wealth imbalance that exists throughout fashion supply chains. This power dynamic is what enables companies to dictate pricing and contract terms in their favor while placing all the responsibility onto their manufacturers when it comes to upholding labor rights standards. If there's no legal obligation on brands for making sure that workers are paid when their factories unexpectedly close or when brands leave these factories, then companies will continue to evade their responsibility. So that said, you can read all about this on Wednesday when a report is out, and we will definitely keep you posted on any new campaign developments or further actions. And again, we'd like to thank you for activating your change-making power through all of these actions that we've been sending your way. And just know that while they may seem small on an individual level, there is real impact in us coming together from all over the world as a collective, whether Nike chooses to acknowledge it or not, and know that these shows of solidarity are empowering workers in their communities as they continue to fight for their rights. And so now I'll pass it to Allison to tell us more about our upcoming programs.
Thank you, Alexa. Hi, everyone. Happy March. Thank you so much, Abrima and Kimberly, for joining us today. It was a very inspiring conversation. We're doing something a little bit different this month than our regular Ambassador of the Month. We're doing an Ambassador Spotlight. We're going to start doing these from now on because our community is so powerful and is growing so much that just calling out one person just isn't enough. So Emily's going to drop the form if you would like to nominate an ambassador to be in our monthly Ambassador Spotlight. There's more in the description on the form, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. So for this month's Ambassador Spotlight, we'll be celebrating Adrienne, who is from our Canadian hub. She's an education advisor at Okanagan College, and she's using her role right now to educate students on the detrimental impacts of fashion, using Remake's resources, doing presentations, and she's also currently working with her students to create a local social enterprise focused on diverting textile waste from local landfills. So very inspiring. Thank you, Adrienne. Next is Remake's entire South Asian hub. This hub is one of our newest, and it's been an absolute honor to see it flourish just over the past year and a half. From conversations that they have in the WhatsApp to seeing photos like this one that you see on the screen from in-person meetups, this group has been working incredibly hard to build an organic Remake community in South Asia. And I want to give an extra shout out to Shivani and to Pooja, our community organizers, to Amin, who hosts a weekly virtual EcoThreads webinar that we're going to drop the link in the chat. The next one is March 22nd, and he also makes workbooks for it to share more about the program. And to Richa, who is tirelessly creating and researching and making resources for our community. So thank you all. And then last but not least, Jaleesa, Van, and Ada from our Seattle hub for having a recent conversation with their state representative about why they support worker-led policy. This is never an easy thing to do, but our Seattle crew makes it look super easy, and it's great experience. So thank you all so much for everything that you do to propel our movement forward. Next, for events for this March, this Friday on March 8th, we will be hosting a panel discussion with 3 female changemakers making positive waves in the industry. Madhu Vaishnaw is the founder and executive director of Sahali Women. Eden Befekadu is the sales and social marketing officer for Mela for Her. And Nazma, who we saw in the beginning in the video that we watched, is the founder and executive director of the Awash Foundation. So we will be speaking. Our very own Emily Stockwell will be moderating, so it'll be a great conversation. And then on March 28th, we'll be doing a program around our 2024 accountability report that Alexa just mentioned. We'll be joined by Remake's accountability team to better understand the report and how you could utilize it in your daily lives, whether you're interested in fashion, you're working in the industry, how you can use it on your own level. You could find both of these events and many more like Amin's EcoThreads program in the Ambassador Hub, and we'll drop a quick link. And a quick plug that we also have a new channel in our Slack called Career and Connect. Thank you, Anna, for helping us set it up. If you're looking for a new job, a new path, or have one that you want to share, feel free to join. And if you have any questions about the Ambassador Hub, the Remake Slack channels, events, or any more ways to get involved, email ambassador@remake.world for any other questions, because I know I moved kind of quick today. But I'm going to hand it on over to Tessa to share more about how you can support Remake's work.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I know we're right up on time, so I'll be super fast. First of all, I hope everyone felt as inspired as I did today. This has been such a powerful conversation, and this entire team and community is so inspiring to me, as always. As a women-led movement and organization, I just wanted to touch on the opportunity here to power this work by becoming a monthly donor. So this Women's History Month, we're asking everyone to consider becoming a gem, essentially. Allison, if you want to jump right to the next slide for me. So a gem is essentially anyone who gives every month, and this could be just the equivalent of a coffee cup a week or a month for you if you want to donate to this work and empower our community. I'd say, we know that there's so much work to be done in this space, and we know that this movement is not only women-led, but often for women, as an over 80% women garment worker force that we serve as well. So I just want to highlight that this is such a powerful way, if you can't, to empower your community, even through social media or through your events that you host, to get involved and to keep this work going long term, because this team and this work means so much to each and every one of us. And in particular, for those that are women here, we know the value and the impact of this movement. So please feel free to become a gem. If you have any questions, I'll drop my email in the chat if you ever want to be involved in fundraising in any way. And thank you so much for your time. I'll pass it back to Emily to close us out here.
Amazing. Not much else to add from me. This has been an incredibly inspiring call today. We're so grateful for each and every one of you, and thank you for spending a part of your Monday with Remake. We'll talk soon. Bye, everyone. Take care.